met in 1996. We got married 2000. Right after we graduated, we had our first baby in 2001. We had our next baby in 2002, and we've had 2 more babies since then. By the time I was 30, I had 4 kids, 4 boys. Okay. So I kind of got thrown into responsible life, I feel like a little bit early, where a lot of my friends are kind of still just kind of settling in marriage. I got a text today from a friend who they're so excited they just, when you get a picture of an ultrasound, that's a big deal. And you only do it with your first kid, by the way. By the 4th one, everyone's like, yeah, who cares? So I got a text today from one of my best friends who they're pregnant, and that's so awesome. So for the last, 16 years, this journey of what it looks like to be in a loving relationship with my wife has just gone through a lot of evolution. And this is what I want to share with you a little bit about, because I feel like it has everything to do with how we approach our faith, how we approach God, His love for us, and what we think the point of this whole thing is. Okay, so this is why we need to talk about love, we need to talk about sex. We're not going to talk about dating, and it's definitely not like an I kiss dating goodbye kind of thing. So if you were hoping for that, you're going to be really disappointed, all right? But we're going to talk about where I'm afraid like we've kind of gone askew with what we think about when we think about love. My contention from having led worship for the last 20 years is that I've misled as much worship as I've led in those last 20 years because I failed to recognize the difference between passion and love. See, when my wife and I first met, and when I proposed to her senior year, and when we were engaged, getting ready to get married in just a couple months, there was a lot of love, there was a lot of passion. Okay, so in this season of being engaged to my wife, wanting to be like honoring of the Lord and wanting to be pure and wanting to honor her, I'm feeling all this passion at the same time that wants to express itself. Do I need to spell this out for you? It wants to express itself, and she's feeling these things too, but see, this is where we have to recognize there's a difference between passion and love. When you're young, you think passion is like the height of love. You think it's the all-encompassing goal of love. You think it's the zenith and it's the fullness of love, passion. And there's nothing wrong with being passionate. I'm just trying to say this afternoon, it's so little an aspect of love. But if we reduce love just to passion, that's like reducing marriage just to sex. And for those of you who are married in here, I don't know like how much sex you're having in a week, but like even if you're having like hours and hours of sex every week, this is still like a tiny percentage of the time that you spend in that week actually like loving. Are y'all with me? A lot of you are like, I can't wait to have so much sex like every week. Believe me, guys, you're going to have like 40, 50 hours of sex every week once you get married, right? I love like in soul music, it's like all night long. You're like, all night, right. Give me a break, Anyway, if we, is it hot? Yeah, it is hot. It's not just me. If you fail to recognize the difference between passion and love, that would be as foolish as failing to recognize the difference between sex and marriage. Guys, sex is an amazing part of marriage. Passion is an amazing part of love, but there's just so much more to marriage than sex, and there's so much more to love than passion. Why are we talking about this afternoon? Let me tell you why. Because I'm afraid when we think about loving the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, and mind and strength, when we think in Revelation of returning to our first love, you know that letter to the church in Ephesus? When we think about the greatest commandment, to love God, oftentimes we only think in terms of passion, and we are really missing 99% of life where God's inviting us to love Him with all that we are, not just with the most ecstatic parts of who we are. Okay, this is so massive, guys, because if you're not careful, you could even go through most of your life with God thinking that, like a time of worship, it's all about you and God having passionate intimacy together. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to say that that's not inaccurate. It is wholly inadequate. Because what happens in a loving, passionate relationship is reproduction. I could show you the text. Ultrasound, and they said it only happened once. They slipped up once. He didn't wear it, she didn't pill it, whatever. Like, all it takes is once. But guys, the result of intimacy is reproduction. That's how it works in the physical. That's how it works biologically. And that's why it's so heartbreaking to us. If you've ever walked with a couple or a family who are trying to have kids and they can't. It's heartbreaking when you find someone who wants to have kids, but they can't. I had lunch with a couple 2 days ago in Atlanta. They've been married 9 years. For 5 years, they've been trying to have kids and they can't. And that is a heartbreaking reality. If you've ever walked with somebody through that, it sucks. So we fast and we pray and we lay hands, and we've seen God open lots of wombs in our community, and we thank God every time he does. We got a text just 3 days ago from another person in our community that they've been wrestling through this. God just came through, and we rejoice in that. But I want you to just see this afternoon, like when someone can't reproduce in the natural realm, that's heartbreaking. When someone doesn't reproduce in the spiritual realm, that's status quo. It's normal. We think it's weird if someone does make disciples. And what I'm trying to say is, guys, what's the point of all this loving on God if it never actually creates life? Love creates life. Passion creates life. Intimacy results in reproduction, but if we're not careful, we'll keep this about us, our experience, this high that we get. And guys, I love the high as much as anyone. I'm just trying to say there's so much more to love than passion. There's so much more to marriage than sex. And there's so much more to worship than your experience. So much more. So about 17 years ago, my wife and I get married. I started traveling a lot, leading worship out on the road. So we get a bus, we're out there with the band, we're doing stuff all over the place, and I'm leading worship at church, and this is just a fun season of our life. And the more and more places that I go, the more conversations I have that are similar with pastors saying, hey, look, we need someone who can help us worship too. We need someone who can help us understand what it means to worship and grow deeper in worship, and do you know anybody? And so I sent everyone that I knew as far as I could go, and we ran out of people pretty quick and began saying, okay, what do we do? There are people all over the place who want to worship God, and that's a massive thing. That's a move of God. I mean, Malcolm was talking about it this morning, this renewal of worship in the last 50, 60 years. Praise God that we're not still all just afraid of him all the time, right? I mean, bless God that there has been a renewal movement where now we adore him and we want to draw in to intimacy and into tenderness. Praise God for that. But what's happened is more and more pastors started calling me saying, look, we've got good singers, but can you send us anyone who can help us grow deeper as worshipers, not just singers? And it broke our hearts in Atlanta to say, we want to do more than we are, and we want to help these churches worship God, because for me, I fell in love with God in worship. I grew up as a pastor's kid. I was born at Bob Jones Hospital in South Carolina. We talk about fundamentalism. You know I'm going to end up in counseling one day. I grew up fundy, okay? I knew God was right. But it wasn't until worship that I tasted that he was good. And my whole world got changed in a time of worship. How many of you've had your world rocked in a time of worship? I mean, it's probably why a lot of us are here, because God's used Will and Nathan and these guys to unlock probably channels of the love of God in so many of our lives. He's done that through those guys in my own life. And it's amazing how powerful worship can be. And I think you see it in Matthew 16. You see Jesus saying to his disciples, who do people say that I am? And they say, some say that you're John the Baptist, some say that you're Elijah, some say that you're Jeremiah, which is interesting, the weeping prophet. And he says, who do you say that I am? And you know what Simon says? You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, and let me tell you who you are. No longer do I call you Simon, I call you Peter. See, what happens is when you declare who he is, you discover who you are. When you open yourself up, and this is what happens in worship, when you open yourself up to the love of God, you also open yourself up to be loved on by God. This is why worship can be so powerful. It's why a loving exchange can be so life-giving, and it was for me. I was 19 years old. I was in California. I wasn't around my fundamentalist friends. I wasn't around my little Baptist world. I'm around just 100 different college students worshiping together every morning. And I began lifting my hands in worship, and I felt chains started coming off of me. Didn't even know I was bound. Chains started coming off of me. Ever since then, it's been like, okay, God, if you will do that in me through a time of worship, then I'm in. If you want to do that through me in times of worship for other people. And since then, we've gotten to go and travel and lead and write songs and record and all this stuff that we hope is helping people get set free by truth. If the truth will set you free, it's because lies have bound you. Does that make sense? And a lot of the lies that we believe are broken off in that right brain worship where we just let ourselves sink further and further in to the truths that we're singing, you know. The sermon can do one thing, the song does something else, it's prose, it's poetry, and we need all of it. But oftentimes what happens is we just settle for what happens in this moment, and then we don't actually go out and reproduce anything in others. And you see a story in Luke chapter 5 where with Jesus' interaction, where he actually meets Simon, where he meets Peter, that I think is really indicative for us of this conversation that we're having that I hope is helpful for you. So if you want to turn on your Bibles or turn in your Bibles to Luke 5, you can. If you don't want to, I'll just read it to you. But in Luke 5, this is where Jesus gets into Simon's boat at the beginning of their relationship, and I just want you to see a couple things that happen. It starts at verse 1. It happened, there was a crowd pressing around Jesus, listening to the word. He's standing by the lake. He sees two boats lying on the edge, and he gets into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and he says, "Put out a little way from the land." He sat down, began teaching the people from the boat. When he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Now, let's just stop right there. I love this. This is our story. This is, Jesus gets into our boat and begins to lead us into the shallow places. Isn't this your story too? Like at some point, Jesus got into your boat and you're like, okay. And then he's like, go over there. And you're like, okay. And he begins teaching and you're front row, man. You're getting the teaching from the Lord. And that's a really good thing. But what happens next is what happens next for us. He says, now go into the deep water. Jesus, let's go deeper. And probably if you've come out camping for 4 days in Bon Aqua, Tennessee, you have a hunger for deep water. You want to go deeper in worship. You want to go further in your love for God. You want to know what else is out there. And I love that. And God loves that. And so Jesus says, go out into the deeper water. And he does. And Jesus says, and let down your nets for a catch. Now, it gets interesting here because verse 5, Simon responds to Jesus and says, we've worked hard all night, we've caught nothing. But I will do as you say and let down the nets. Now, Simon's a professional fisherman. Jesus is a carpenter, okay? He works with like rocks and wood. Simon knows what he's doing. Jesus doesn't. Simon knows better than Jesus. Have you ever found yourself like that? We've worked hard all night. The way you catch fish in that lake to this day is shallow water at night. You catch fish in shallow water at night, and they've been doing it all night, and they've caught nothing. And so Jesus is teaching now in the daytime, and he says, let's go out into the deep water. You catch fish in shallow water at night, but Jesus says, I see something else. There's another way. Go into the deeps in the day. What a good picture of what's happening here this afternoon. Going deep in the middle of the day. You're like, oh, we usually only meet with God at night or in the morning. Here we are in the afternoon. So I will do as you say. Look at that. Simon's one decision changes his destiny. I'll do as you say. And by the way, Simon's one decision there changed your destiny. This is going to become the rock of the church. Simon's one moment of surrender to the wisdom of Jesus as opposed to his own, of trusting in the Lord, not leaning on his own understanding. Just this one decision for Simon changes the future. We've been going all night. We've caught nothing, but I will do as you say. That's a pretty huge but. I will do as you say. Next verse. When they had done this, you know how the story ends, I bet. They enclosed a great quantity of fish. Their nets began to break. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat for them to come help them. As they came and filled both of the boats, so that they both began to sink. Oh, you all right? You're good. It's cool. So when Simon Peter saw this, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man," because amazement had seized him and all of his companions because of the catch of fish which they had taken. Do you see what happens there? Jesus says, let's go into the deeper water. Just like I bet for every single one of you, you've gone deeper with the Lord. And I hope the rest of our lives we continue to go deeper and deeper with the Lord. We should be going from glory to greater glory, shouldn't we? That's what Paul says in 2 Corinthians. Proverbs says, the path of the righteous are like the dawning of the day, shining brighter and brighter until noon approaches. I love that picture, and I embrace that and say yes to that in spite of what our culture says. Our culture kind of expects, get on fire for the Lord like when you're, a teenager, and then press in hard in your 20s and in college, and then, have kids, get a mortgage, give a little bit more, And then just kind of keep coming. We don't expect a whole lot of you by 40, 50, 60. But the arc that you see in the Bible isn't this peaking when you're young and then this gradual just entropy. You see glory going to glory, going to glory, going to ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. This is what you see in Psalm 92 as well. The last verse of Psalm 92, I think it's verse 12, it says this: "The righteous will flourish like palm trees, bearing fruit in old age." Palm trees are amazing. You're not going to see any of them around here because you only find them in certain places. But here's the thing that's different about palm trees. They get more fruitful every year that they live. They're the only tree like this. I don't know of anything in nature like this. I thank God that humans aren't like this. The older you get, the more kids you have, that would be bad news, all right? We shut things down at 4. If we were still going, I would drive myself off of a bridge. Okay, so the way that things work with us is a season of fruitfulness and then a season of barrenness. That's how it works naturally. That's not how it works for palm trees. Palm tree, year 5, fruitful. Year 10, way more fruitful. Year 20, way more fruitful. Year 40, way more fruitful. And that's the picture that Psalm 92 gives for the righteous, flourishing like a palm tree. That's my invitation to you. That's the vision that I want to speak over you guys, because a lot of you are my stage or younger or maybe a little older, but so many of us probably expect we're going to go hard here, we're going to run hard, and then we're just going to kind of chill out. But I want to reject that cultural lie over you and say, press in harder, keep going deeper, keep going further, and let's let Jesus continue to lead us, even if he's taken us places that we know better than to go. And all of our experience says, no, this is how you do it. If Jesus says, well, we're going to do it this way this time, then may you go with Jesus. But may you recognize the point of all that depth. Jesus takes Peter out into the depths, not just so that they can get out in the depths. Whoa, I love being so deep with Jesus. He takes him out there so that something can happen, so that he can let down the nets. What has all of your pressing in and all of your walking with and all of your absorbing of Scripture, what has that done so far for anyone except you? There's my question for you. Thank you. Honestly, guys, if we're not careful, we will turn our love of God into lust for God. Where we actually are just wanting stuff from him. Are you hearing me? Look at what it says in Psalm 131. It's this tiny little psalm, second shortest chapter in the whole Bible, behind Psalm 117. It says this: "I have stilled and composed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child is my soul within me." Psalm 131, verse 2. "I've quieted and composed my soul." One of my friends, Rachel Graham, she's right back here. She's got her little daughter, Ari, who's the most beautiful little girl I've ever seen. And Ari is asleep. Is she asleep? There she is, just resting on Rachel's chest. Now, good luck getting a nursing baby to rest on your chest if they're hungry. Do you know what a nursing baby wants if they get near your chest? Dinner. That's what. And if a baby is nursing and mom comes around and that baby's hungry, they have this sixth sense. They're like, boobs are close. Must have them now. Some guys never grow out of that, okay? Must have them. Shame on you guys. That's what happens when you're a baby, when you're nursing. But look, the difference is, it says like a winged child is my soul within me. The difference between a nursing baby and a weaned baby is a weaned baby can just be with the mother without always having to get something from the mother. How about you? How about when you're with God? Are you okay to just bless God and just give to God and just love Him regardless of what it does for you? Regardless of the feeling. Oftentimes I think we get sucked in. Again, it's this love, passion, marriage, sex thing, and we end up just looking for this hit, looking for this fix. And if we're not careful, I just really wonder if, in the Greek and the Hebrew, actually, there's different words for love. And this is hard for us because in this one word, love, I could say, I love that chewing gum, and I love my wife, and I love skydiving, or whatever. Same word, but in these biblical languages, there's different words for these things. And oftentimes what happens is we associate biblical approaches with cultural paradigms. So we bring a cultural understanding of what it means to love God or be loved by God. We bring a cultural paradigm of actually using God or abusing God. If we're not careful, we'll trade love for sex or love for passion. I'm just trying to say, guys, there's something that happens actually if love really is beautifully expressed, faithfully expressed, biblically expressed. Here's what happens. Life is created. The nets get let down. You go deep so that you can let down those nets. Your nets. How are you doing with your nets? How long have you been out in the deep? And how are you doing with letting down the nets? Because oftentimes what happens is we've got churches full of believers who've been walking with God for a very long time. I mean, I asked my mom a few years ago. She's a godly woman. She's amazing. I was like, Mom, why aren't you pouring into anyone? Why aren't you discipling anyone? You could be so helpful for so many people in our church. And she said, I just don't know what I would have to give. Can you see what a travesty it is for someone who's been walking with God for a long time and has all kinds of treasure? They possess so many resources of the kingdom and they don't know what they have. See, we all know that you'll never give what you don't possess. That's obvious. But what we don't recognize is that you will also never give what you don't know that you do possess. You've been walking with Jesus for a season. You've got something to give to someone else. And everything that God does in you should not end with you. But it will if we fail to recognize the difference between passion and love. Here's another thing. When my wife and I were engaged, we're feeling all this passion, but we're wanting to be pure. If we had given into our passion, is that love? It's the opposite of love. Here's all I want you to see. 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient. Patient. Often patience and passion are going in opposite directions. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. We can't even imagine love that's not this intense, Ryan Gosling and whatever her name is, when we think about love, I'm just saying, we are more informed by culture than we are by Scripture. And we bring that into our love of God, and this is why things get stunted, is because we can just make it about this beautiful exchange of love, and we never actually get past a miscarriage in reproduction. We're barren. We're sterile. We're not reproducing. We're not doing what Jesus did. We're just enjoying being out in the deep waters. Are y'all with me so far? There is a massive difference, guys. Massive difference between saying that you love someone and loving them. That's another thing. It's very easy to say that you love something. It's very hard to faithfully love something. I think it's why there's only one place in the book of Psalms where it says, I love you, Lord. One. Psalm 18:1. And the word is abad. It actually means I obey you. In the Psalms, you don't find a lot of gushy sentimentality and piety. You find a lot of brutality, a lot of reality, and a lot of honesty. But in our worship, and if we're not careful, guys, we'll be very effusive in our telling God how much we love him with all that we are. Oh, how we surrender to him with everything we have. And then we'll go and live very contrary to what we just said. In church, we don't tell lies. We just sing them all the time. But guys, if I just tell my wife how much I love her all the time, but I never actually love her, how well do you think she's going to respond to me giving her all these wonderful poetic overtures? It's not going to work. And guys, in the Bible, it doesn't work. Isaiah 1, God's like, when you sing, I hate the sound. You lift your hands, I turn my face. Burn your incense, I hate the smell. Why? Because their lives didn't match up with their liturgy. You don't get to just tell God how much you love him all the time without actually loving him. Be very careful, because we can be very easily deceived into thinking that because we tell Jesus how much we worship him, that we actually are worshiping him. There's a difference between telling someone something and doing it. And I'm just trying to say, 17 years into marriage, guys, there's a lot more to loving my wife now than just the passionate moments that we get together once every blue moon. Don't worry. When those blue moons roll around, come on. It's like Marvin Gaye is playing all night long. But there's just so much more to it than that. Now, there's faithfulness, there's forgiveness along the way. We've had to work through conflict. We've had to really seek to understand each other. We've had to prefer each other. We've had to pray for one another, and we've had to get wisdom and counsel. When I think about what it means to love now, I think so much more broadly and robustly and deeply than just this sliver of intensity. But my son now, he's 16, and his girlfriend broke up with him recently, and his world is over. Why? Because it's intense when you're 16. It should be. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is when we expect at 60 to still feel like we did when we were 16. That's not growing up. That's dumbing down. And sometimes in worship, we can project onto people. You need to love God like you did 20 years ago. That might be very impossible. It's definitely not sustainable. To keep trying to rile up what was, like if I was just being held to task, like how's your marriage right now compared to how it was the first day, I'd say, man, it's so much deeper. But if you said, well, just in terms of your level of passion right at this second, I'd be like, oh, not very good. I'm not feeling like real aroused right now. I hope you're not. That'd be weird if you were. But early on, man, it's just passion. I'm not trying to beat this thing into the ground, but are you at least seeing the main idea of what I'm talking about? Okay, here's the last thing that I want to just get into. We've mentioned love. We've mentioned sex. Now, where does the fullness of life come into this? Because when it's all about you getting some fix from sex or from God and worship or whatever else, you're still making this about you. And what I want you to see is that actually stepping into this next stage of life for myself has been the hardest one I've ever done, but it's also been the most rewarding step I've ever taken, because what Jesus said really is true. If we try to cling to our life, we'll lose it. And that's what our culture is showing. If you just cling, just grab, get as much as you can while you can. It's Ecclesiastes. It's like chasing after the wind. But if you have been given all authority, you're a child of the King. You know what you possess. You've gone deeper with the Lord, and you know how to give that away and are willing to give that away and lay down your life. You'll find, just like Jesus said, if you lay it down, you actually find it. And it's amazing. I used to hate Psalm 16. I hated it. Because there's this verse in it that says this. It says, the boundary lines have fallen from me in pleasant places. People would send me that verse, I'd be like, I hate that verse. The boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. I hated that because I grew up, I told you, I'm a fundamentalist, and if you grow up fundamentalist, you're going to be rebellious. That's the only combination, or you're going to be like a sociopath. And I don't think I'm a sociopath. I definitely have a rebellious streak. And what it developed in me was this penchant, this leaning, so that if you tell me, don't step on this grass, every time I'm like, And if there's a fence that's like, don't touch, electrically charged, every time I'm like, really? It's usually not. I just have something in me. It's a bunch of garbage. You've done this? Oh yeah, I've done this. Yeah. Oh, but I mean, my friends are a bunch of sadists. Like, for one of our friends' bachelor party, one of the challenges was we took one of the dog's electric shock collars. And it goes from 1 to 128, and everyone had to write on a sheet of paper what number you were willing to receive the shock yourself. And then you don't know what anybody else is going to write, but whoever's willing to write the highest one and then receive that shock is the winner of that round or whatever. So I had to do 128. I've had a weird twitch ever since then. My heart's had a weird rhythm. Just kidding. No, that was a true story, actually. But I'm just saying there's something in me that wants to push against. There's something in me that wants to, if there's a boundary, I don't like it. And what I've learned through counseling, through pastoral insight, people speaking into my life, is that's a gift in a way. Because some boundaries need to be taken down. Some walls need to come down. But then some boundaries need to be respected and don't need to be flirted with. And not being able to distinguish the difference can be really dangerous and really foolish. My pastor, one of the most helpful things he ever told me was, he said, Aaron, you have to figure out the difference between a river and a swamp. Like a river and a swamp. He would speak in these cryptic aphorisms, like river and a swamp. He's like, you got to figure out the difference between a river and a swamp. And he said, the difference is boundaries. Rivers stay in their boundaries. They bring life and beauty everywhere they go. If you have a river in your backyard, your real estate's just going to keep doing this. A swamp doesn't respect its boundaries. It goes anywhere it wants. It says yes to everything. And it doesn't bring beauty in life. It brings stench and death. If you have a swamp in your backyard, you need to sell that house. And what he was speaking to me was, you need to figure out who God's called you to be. As you go deeper with God, you need to figure out what does it look like to go deeper with your boundaries. And that sent me, guys, honestly, into a 6-month difficult journey of trying to get counsel and input from community and friends and family saying, who do you see that God's made me to be? In the ancient world, they didn't have mirrors. I mean, the only way you would even know what you look like is if you saw it in a stream, probably, or in a pond. I mean, think about that. A lot of people grew up never having seen a mirror. So the way that you know what you're like is by people's interaction with you. That's how you know. We don't like to think about that. We think that we're individualists, but we are communal. We are socially wired to need each other and to depend on each other. And so it was not just me asking God, what are my boundaries? But it was me asking God and a lot of people around me, who do you see God made me to be? 6 months. And it was hard because basically what everyone said was pretty similar. And what nobody said was some of the stuff I wanted God to have made me to be. Back into counseling. Counselor says, How acquainted with you are grieving? And I said, not very acquainted. Not a lot of people who've been very close to me died early in my life. I haven't had to do a lot of grieving. And he's like, well, the reason I ask is because grieving is the process of letting something go. It's the process of letting something die. And so you guys know the stages of grief, from denial to acceptance and all that stuff. But he said, until you grieve what you will never have or what you will never be, you will always be discontent and you'll always be looking for something that you need to let die. That wasn't a 6-month difficult journey. That was about a 6-week despondency of saying, okay, I either need to accept the boundaries that God has given me, or I will destroy myself, and probably a lot of people around me, going after stuff that he hasn't given me. And I don't think that's just me. I think that's some of you too. You know what I can say now? This is years later, having done a lot of counseling, a lot of grief work, having done a lot of grieving. I can finally agree with the psalmist. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I love the boundaries that God has put around my life. And the boundaries that God's put around your life are going to be different than the person beside you. And they're also going to wind. You know, rivers wind. When God makes a river, it brings beauty and life to as many places as it possibly could. When man makes a river, it looks like interstate, Panama Canal. But when God makes a river, it cuts and it winds and it's got rapids. It's exciting. Until you embrace the boundaries that God's given you and you continue to just run after all kinds of excitement, guys, I think there's a season where that's not too destructive. But there will come a season where if you don't recognize the difference between running after love, or surrendering rather into love, or running after passion, you're going to wear yourself out, and chances are you might do a lot of damage to yourself and a lot of other people. The Lord saved me. I mean, he's kept me from going off cliffs before with choices that I would have made if he hadn't rescued me. And I just want to say to however many of you there are that are sitting out here in a sweltering day to hear a talk about love, sex, and the fullness of life, I just want to say, you've got so much in you that people around you need. Maybe it's the next generation. Maybe it's just some younger people in your community. But you have so much in you that's worth giving away. If you've been walking with Jesus for a little while, if you've let him into your boat and you've gone into the shallow water and gotten his teaching, that's what Simon did. And then Jesus said, let's go deeper. If you've gone deeper, and you need to have gone deeper, you need to have gone deeper before you start trying to reproduce yourself. You need to go deep before you let down the nets, because it gets really messy when kids have kids. 13-year-olds can have kids, doesn't mean that they should have kids. Doesn't usually go very well for the kid or for the family. You need to be at a certain place of stability and strength and maturity, but you don't need to just go the rest of your life thinking this is about you. And see, we have proverbs, not biblical proverbs, but cultural proverbs that reinforce these wrong assumptions. Here's one. Life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. So I could get up here and preach that to you, and I could do it probably pretty well and get you to slow down, pace yourself. This has got to be sustainable. We got to hit the end of the finish line, not burn out along the way, blah, 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 blah. But what I want to tell you is life isn't a sprint or a marathon. It's a relay. And if you drop the baton, it doesn't matter how fast you ran. We got a lot of people still holding on to the baton. We got a whole generation saying, can we get a chance? And it's exactly what Malcolm was talking about this morning. If we keep clinging to our lives, clinging to our depth in God, clinging to whatever, instead of giving it away and giving people another chance, we're not just robbing them, we're robbing ourselves of the fullness of life that Jesus invited us into. John 10:10. we're robbing ourselves, y'all. It's way harder to have 4 kids than to have no kids. It's way harder to actually love than to talk about how much you love. But there's so much more reward in actually doing this stuff than talking about it or singing about it. The last thing I'll mention to you, and then we can do Q&A or we can just be done, whatever you want to do, is Nehemiah. If you've grown up around church, you probably know a bit of the story of Nehemiah. Maybe you know the whole story, but I bet you don't know the end because no one ever teaches it. Big picture of Nehemiah is this. Israel's been out of their land for a long time in exile, and Nehemiah has it on his heart to rebuild the walls of this city. Back in those days, if you didn't have walls, you're a sitting duck. And so Nehemiah's like, we need to rebuild these walls. And so he gets permission, and really cool story. Nehemiah 1 through 12, amazing. Nehemiah is able to help the people rebuild the walls. They do it. They fight distractions. They stay focused. It's awesome. Now here's what happens at the end. And this is what nobody ever teaches. Nehemiah Chapter 13. He's been working on the wall. They've finished the project. Massive reform. It's not just a wall. I mean, the people have changed through his ministry. The priesthood has been changed. They're bringing worship again. They're observing the Sabbath again. When Nehemiah is around, everything's working. But what happens in Nehemiah 13 is this. He has to go away for a year. He goes back to the king. What I want you to hear is what happens when he comes back. When he gets back, guess what? Everything has gone back to how it was. They've got a wall, but that's about all. The people are a mess. They're not observing the Sabbath. The worship's gone off the rails. Someone's moved into the holy place in the temple. They just moved in. They made it their apartment. Nehemiah is ticked. He's throwing furniture out of the temple like a repo man. It says he's pulling people's beards out, spitting on them. He is ticked. The only person he should be ticked at is himself. Because look, there's a difference between success and succession. If everything that God does in you ends with you, you failed. Nehemiah knew how to get breakthrough, but as soon as he was gone, so did the only person who knew how to get breakthrough. If we're not careful, guys, we'll continue to make ourselves indispensable, make this about ourselves, instead of raising up people who can do what we can do better than we can do it. See, as a parent, I don't want my kids to grow up and be just like me. I don't want them to live my life. I want my ceiling to be their floor. I want them to go so much further than me and to dream so much bigger dreams than me and to take, for sure, what I've got to give and to take what my wife has to give and to take what God's only given them that he didn't give either of us. And for that to actually propel them into something that I could never even imagine. That's what I want for my kids. And this is exactly what we should want for the people around us in our communities that God's put us in any kind of position of influence for. Not that they would become just like us, but that we could actually give ourselves so that they can become the fullest version of themselves as possible and go further. Again, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fullness of life. Guys, love creates life. So I just wonder, who's around you back home? Who's around you? Who's in your community? Who's on your sophomore hall? I don't know. Who are the people around you that maybe if you had eyes to see all that depth that God's given you over the years, it's so that you can begin to let down the nets. When they take those nets up, what happened? The nets started breaking and the boats started sinking. Guys, how many fish were in that lake? I have no idea, but I know it was more than they were able to contain. I think what we'll see if we start to step out of ourselves and our preoccupation with our experiences and start dying to ourselves and start giving ourselves away, I think we'll start to see God is on the move more all around us than we have any capacity to even contain. They call other partners around and they begin to help, and that sinks those boats too. And guys, we've been experiencing this as a community in Atlanta just for the last few years. We started a worship school 10 years ago where we had some guys come live with us for 6 months at a time, 4 months at a time. Andy lived with us for about a year, a little more than that, from Ireland. He's an amazing worship leader, Rachel's husband. Since then, we've had more and more worship leaders come to do life and to do training, and let's study the Bible and study our craft, and let's let God into our soul, and let's learn how to go deeper so that we can let down the nets. And things just grew and grew to where our boat was sinking, our family. And it was like, we need partners. So we call partners. We call our friends. Dwayne, Taylor, and some of these guys in the back have come around us and helped carry this load of this harvest that God's bringing us, and it's amazing. I just throw all this out to say, guys, you have so much more to offer than you even know. No, you'll never give what you never possess, but you will also never give away what you don't know that you possess. Knowing what you possess, maybe that's another word for authority. They were amazed at Jesus. He spoke as one having authority. It's when you know what you have, you can speak with authority. And when you know what you have, you know what you don't have, so you can also carry yourself with humility. The last thing, though, is you'll never actually give your life away if you haven't yet settled into what God's called you to be. You just won't do it. You'll actually use people around you to go higher instead of give yourself so that others can go higher. But when Saul, man, when he heard that song, Saul slayed his thousands, but David his 10,000s. That should be the song every one of us wants to hear at the end of our life. That we got some breakthrough, but the person coming behind us is 10 times more fruitful than we are. That's what I want to hear. That's what Saul should have wanted to hear. But if you're not careful, and if the character thing's not worked out, you could start to actually become pretty jealous of the people around you. Compare yourself to the people around you. Insecure about the people around you. When what Jesus did, he showed us what it looks like to know what you possess, speak with authority. Know what you're not called to, live with humility. To know it's not just about himself. I mean, you don't get much deeper in God than Jesus. And he didn't just go out into the desert and spend forever. He spent time in the desert for sure. You're going to need some time in the desert. But he came out of the desert in power. Power to do what? Power to raise up others who would change the world. This is our whole heart at 10,000 Fathers. This is why we exist. We want to raise up an army of mothers and fathers for the next generation who can do that with character, with competency, understanding their calling, and understanding that worship and love were never meant to just be about us and what God's doing here. This is beautiful in the same way that sex is beautiful, but it's just not all there is. It results in something that we have altogether abandoned in the church. That's reproduction. We keep thinking our life is about our growth. I'm telling you guys, at some point, your growth goes to the back burner and your reproduction comes front and center. I ran into, last story and I can be done. I ran into a guy, I wish I could show you the picture. I ran into a guy going into the bank a couple years ago. I live in like Nowheresville, Georgia, okay, 45 minutes outside of Atlanta in a city called Snellville. There's nothing going on in Snellville. We don't have celebrities in Snellville. But I walked into Chase Bank and I was on the phone and in front of me was the biggest human I've ever seen. He ducked to go into the bank. I was with my friend David and I hit him and I was like, look at this guy. It's amazing. When we got inside the bank, I realized it's Shaquille O'Neal. Everyone's like wanting to take pictures with him. He just moved to town and he's setting up a bank account or something. And I've just never seen anyone that size. I'm 6'1", he's 7'1". Okay, so he's so big. He's a huge human. 7'1". And it made me think about Robert Wadlow. Anybody ever heard of this guy? The Gentle Giant, 1940s in Chicago. This guy, the tallest guy that ever lived that we have on record, he was 8'11". Google him. Robert Wadlow. I'm dead serious. Google him sometime. The pictures, he would almost be hitting that right there. What happened in Robert Wadlow? He's 8'11". He dies at 22 because your body isn't supposed to support all that growth. Something was wrong with his pituitary gland. It kept secreting growth hormones. He kept growing and growing. By 12, he's on leg braces. He's not supposed to do that. He weighed 437 pounds. He wore a size 37 shoe. And the doctor said at his death, there was no sign that his growth was going to slow down anytime soon. That is growth gone wild. Growth out of control. And y'all, I end with that just to say, a lot of us think that's what God wants for us, that we would just keep growing for our churches. We keep growing for our walk with God. We'll keep growing. At some point, your life, you physically stop growing and start reproducing. Why doesn't that happen in spiritual life? That's the problem. It's got to become the norm. You grow, you need to grow. Go deeper. Yes, go deeper. At some point, though, learn to let down your nets because God has so much more he wants to do through you than just what he wants to do in you. The stuff that he's done in you, guys, it is for you, but it's not only for you. You are walking around with things that God has given you that people around you need. Do you have eyes to see them? Do you know how to even give it to them? That's your nets, your systems, your strategies for actually bringing in fish. Do you have people who can do it with you? That's your partners. Those are the boats. Who are the people that you need to call to help you do this well? You see it all in Luke 5. Guys, you see it all over the life of Jesus, and you just don't see it anywhere in our churches. So I commission and I challenge you to learn how to not just go deeper in your passion with God. I am so thrilled that we're all passionate for God. But I'm challenging you to think through how can you love God outside of passion? Through sacrifice, which ironically is what passion means, suffering. How can you love God through serving? How can you love God through giving, not getting? And can we be those who are at such a place, like Psalm 131 said, we can just be still with the Lord, not even necessarily needing anything from him. Please don't hear what I'm not saying. We get everything we have from him. In him we live and move and have our being. I'm not saying any of that. It's not true. I'm just saying if our relationship is always one of a needy, kind of codependent victim, who wants to be in a relationship with a person like that? But if we know what we carry and we know who he is, we're secure in that stuff, we can give it away to everyone that we meet. And things start to change really quick when you're not the only one in your city going after something. You're the only one in your community leaning in for something or pressing in for something. Things get really interesting. So I'm challenging you to grow up a little in your love for God, to go deeper than you ever have, but to do it for the point of actually reproducing in others, not just to have better and better, more and more dynamic, ecstatic experiences. Fair enough? Awesome. So how do you apply this in the context of singleness? The best way to practice being a spiritual father or mother one day is to be a great spiritual brother or sister today. So how are you walking with the people around you? So if you're like, I still need to go deeper before I begin reproducing, good that you know that. How are you doing it? What's your plan to actually go deeper? Dallas Willard, a hero of ours, he said, basically, every church needs to just ask two questions. What's your plan for making disciples? Is it working? What's your plan for making disciples? And the reason I'm using disciples and children interchangeably is because the Bible does. After the book of Acts, you don't find the word disciple in the Bible. It goes away. Why? Because it's a Jewish construct, a rabbi and a disciple. I don't know a rabbi. I've never had a rabbi. I don't know if you know a rabbi. Probably not. And so the language changes after Acts from disciples and masters to fathers and sons. And so Paul says stuff like this, I can't come, I'm sending you my son whom I love. John says, no greater joy do I have than that my children walk in truth. The language changes. The meaning is the same. And I think the actual gravity increases from a teacher who's giving you what you need to know to a father or mother who's giving you their very self. So how are you doing with just walking with the people around you, supporting them, sacrificing for them, loving them? That's where I'd start. Is that okay? Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, what does it actually practically look like to disciple someone? Well, this is why we started our whole school. The biggest thing is presence. So let me just read 2 verses to you. Mark 3:14, and then Acts 4:13. When Jesus calls his guys, let me read to you the language. It says, Jesus appointed 12 so that they would be with him. Someone say, be with him. Okay, so this is the beginning. He calls 12 to be with him. He does all this ministry, teaching, resurrection, healing. It's all amazing. It's awesome. Then he gets crucified. Then he resurrects, and then he ascends, And then Acts 4. Listen to the language. Peter and John are preaching with so much boldness. Acts 4. It's right after Acts 2, Holy Spirit, Pentecost. Acts 4, Holy Spirit comes again, shakes the room. It's awesome. And look at verse 13. The people observed the confidence of Peter and John, understood these are uneducated, untrained men, and they were amazed and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. What did Jesus call them to do? You said it out loud. To be with him. After Jesus was gone, they have become just like him. Why? Because they got to be with him. That's how powerful presence is, and that's how powerful presence is back then, when there wasn't iPhones, there wasn't Facebook. Guys, I'm telling you, presence is the most powerful thing you could possibly operate in these days. To really invite someone into your life, not just what you know, into who you are, into your story, and to be invited into theirs, that's a whole different thing than just a fill-in-the-blank Bible study. Discipleship is not something that happens an hour of the week at Starbucks. Discipleship is how everything on your calendar happens all week. Bringing people along to be with you. It changes everything. And that's the crazy thing, man. It's the easiest thing to understand. It's the hardest thing to prioritize. To actually let people just be with us. But again, until we do that, we're just not doing it like Jesus. We might be going deep. We might be having great experiences. But we've yet to really enter into the fullness of life, because fullness happens through emptiness. You're more filled as you pour yourself out than if you just keep trying to take more and more in. Leonard Ravenhill, this old revivalist, said it well. He said, the more of our emptiness we can present to the Lord, the more of his fullness we can receive. So in discipleship, we just pour ourselves out, and we pour ourselves out, and God has to keep refilling us, or we're going to run out really quick. This is a beautiful thing. It's really beautiful. Guys, thanks so much for letting me hang with you. I hope we didn't get too racy. If we did, I'm sorry. Bless you guys. Hey, if you want to stay in touch, really easy, worship.school. That's our website. Email comes through, all that stuff, worship.school. If you're interested, later.
I'm not in a hurry when it comes to your spirit, when it comes to your presence, when it comes to your voice.